You need to make sure that you have the right people around you, the right people giving the right advice. So don't get your financial advice from TikTok, don't get it from LinkedIn, don't get it from Facebook. Get it from a qualified broker that you know, that you trust, someone who knows and understands your personal circumstances. Because there are no two homes that are exactly the same, there are no two buyers that are exactly the same, and there are no two deals that are exactly the same. Last year, I had a friend of mine who was looking to purchase, and she was convinced that she wouldn't qualify for a mortgage. This is despite the fact that she had been saving. She had a considerable amount for a deposit. She was managing her finances well. She was doing all of the things right. At some point in her experience, someone had told her that it would be really hard for her to get a mortgage. It wasn't based on her individual circumstances, it was just one of those things that people say. Just like the conversation that is happening both in the US and the UK around how difficult it is to get on the housing ladder. Now, that may be true for some people and less true for other people. So this individual, this friend of mine, she was told that it would be very difficult for her to find a home. We were talking about it, and I said, well, let's do this. Let's look at your finances. When we looked at them, as I said, she had a good amount in savings. What she was looking to purchase was within her means. She'd been at her job for a while. So I said, let's get you an agreement in principle. Let's start there. So we ran an application, got her an agreement in principle, and an agreement in principle is essentially a bank saying that based on this cursory information that you've provided, we'd be willing to lend you X amount. We got that agreement in principle. She took that, and based on what the bank said they would lend to her, she started looking for homes. It took her about 3-4 months. She found a couple of homes that she was interested in. She allowed me to negotiate the deal for her, so I dealt directly with the estate agents. Some of them didn't go through. Some of them, the estate agents or the seller was looking for more than my client was willing to spend. But long story short, she ended up finding a home that she loved, that was within her budget and was where she wanted it to be. She completed about 2 months ago. So the moral of this story is, don't just listen to what people tell you. If you're ready to buy and you're in a good financial situation, or you feel that you may be, just speak to a mortgage broker. Speak to someone that can review your finances, that can look at your profile, look at the deals that are out there, and give you some options. Then you can look at those options and decide if they fit your need.
Depending on who you speak to in your personal circumstances, getting a mortgage is either really easy or really hard. My name is Anthony Lindsay, and I'll also be talking about my new book and an exciting in-person mortgage masterclass. So watch to the end, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and put your questions in the chat. Just do remember, your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up your repayments. Regardless of how you look at it, you have to remember that getting a mortgage is just math. Don't take it personally. Don't be emotional. The bank is not out to get you, and they are not your enemy. It's going to come down to some simple things. It comes down to what I call SID. So your credit score, your income, and your deposit. We'll be talking about this in a lot more detail a little bit later. But one of the big mistakes that people make when looking for a mortgage is not going to a mortgage broker. Now, I'm not saying that because I am a mortgage broker. I'm just saying it because going to a mortgage broker is going to give you more choice, because mortgage brokers are going to work with more than one lender. I've been a bank manager at all the big brands in the UK, HSBC, Lloyds, TSB. And one thing that I know, no matter how well my staff were trained, when they're speaking to clients, they could only speak to clients about the products that we sold. Going to a mortgage broker is going to give you more choice, that they can find a lender that matches your needs and your circumstances. I do also find that you get a higher level of service from mortgage brokers because mortgage brokers are reliant on referrals. When you walk into a bank and you speak to a mortgage broker or a mortgage advisor, you are trading on the bank's reputation. So you've already gone in there and you want to do business with them. With a broker, you're probably not going to work with them unless they were referred by someone or you see great reviews. Not to mention that when you speak to a broker, they'll give you advice around your protection. So that would be insurance and wills. Who's involved with getting a mortgage? You have your broker, your estate agent, and your solicitor. Always remember that the estate agent is not your friend. No matter how nice they are, the estate agent works for the seller. The estate agent has a responsibility to get the seller the highest price possible. And you'll also need a solicitor. Do not cut corners with your solicitor. Quite often, I find that people will look for the cheapest solicitor. Remember that your solicitor is going to take care of a lot of the legal matters. And when purchasing a home, the process is only as fast as the slowest person. So you don't want your solicitor or your broker making the deal or the process take longer, because as we say in the industry, time kills deals. So the longer something takes, the more likely it is to fall through, keeping in mind that about 50% of mortgages don't go through anyway, either because the seller pulls out, the lender pulls out, or somebody pulls out of that deal. So the process is not a 100% process to begin with. So having a slow solicitor or a slow broker is just going to increase the probability or possibility that the deal does not complete. There are several key stages to getting a mortgage. Stage number one is when you speak to your broker and you're going to have a conversation about your finances. They're going to get an understanding of who you are, what you're looking for, and how to best meet your needs. Now, an FCA regulated broker is going to give you advice and give you information. It's not always going to be what you want to hear, but they are going to do their best sometimes to protect you from yourself. So find a good broker that you can trust, someone that's going to give you the best advice. They'll do that initial assessment with a view of getting you what's called an agreement in principle. Some people call it a decision in principle, a mortgage in principle. Essentially, it's a cursory overview of your situation being put to a bank or a lender to see if, based on that cursory information, that bank would offer you a mortgage. A lot of estate agents and a lot of sellers will require that you have an agreement in principle in order to make an offer. So once you have that agreement in principle, you can go out, search for a property with a level of confidence that you'll be able to borrow the amount that you need for that property. Once you found the property, you will then be moving into what's called the full mortgage application, keeping in mind that the agreement in principle is essentially about you as the buyer, whereas the full mortgage application is going to take into account the actual property. So you might find that you have been offered an agreement in principle, but the lender may not lend on that specific property. Once the offer has been accepted, they will initiate evaluation. This is where the lender is saying, well, I know the seller thinks that the house is worth this much, and you think that the house is worth this much, but we're the one putting up the money. We're putting up the money, so we need to assess how much we think it is worth. So remember, that's a valuation, and it's not a survey. So it's the bank saying, this is how much we think that property is worth. Then the legal stuff happens. That's why it's important that you have your solicitor in place well in advance, that when you get to the stage where the solicitor is involved, you don't just start your search for solicitors. Then you go to exchange of contracts and then completion. Because let's just be honest, you don't want a mortgage, you want a home. Getting a mortgage and speaking to a mortgage broker is a necessary part of the process, but ultimately you're trying to get keys to your new home. A few things that you can do to get the very best price. I offer a free negotiation service, and I know a lot of other brokers do that as well. The benefit of having your broker negotiate the deal for you is that the broker does this all day, every day. So more likely than not, they'll be able to negotiate a deal better than you would be able to. Also, they may identify things that might be problematic when you get to the point of completing a full mortgage application. As the buyer, you do want to try to ascertain the reason for the sale, but don't get emotional. Men, don't allow your wife to get so emotionally tied into the property that when you're negotiating, you're giving away the farm. All right. So you do want to make sure it's a place that your family wants to be, that you are happy to wake up and go to work to pay that mortgage, but don't get so emotionally tied in that you are unable to negotiate the very best deal. A few things to stop, start, and continue. So stop applying for credit once you start the process. I've seen people get an agreement in principle, then between the agreement in principle and finding the property, they go out and take out a £10,000 loan, and then it knocks out the affordability. So stop applying for credit, stop getting those searches, start paying off small balances. So if you have small balances that you can pay off, pay them off. Sometimes a little bit smaller deposit is better than having outgoings that is impacting your affordability. And don't forget that the deposit does not come out of your account until pretty late in the process. So continue saving. And if you can, go on Money Saving Supermarket, find a high interest savings account, because you're not going to need the money right away. You may be able to earn some additional interest on that money while you're waiting to pay out the deposit. Don't forget about additional expenses, especially if you've been living at home and not had the responsibility of having your own home. Don't forget that when you purchase your own home, you're responsible for everything. So don't forget about stamp duty, legal fees, moving costs, protection or insurance, and potential repairs and renovations. Most people are going to exhaust most of their savings when they purchase a property. So if your boiler breaks, if the roof falls in, things that could happen, make sure that you're considering those things. I have a new book out. It's called A Mortgage is a Really Big Loan. You can get your copy on Amazon. And thank you for joining us. And we do our mortgage property chats pretty much every month on the first and second Wednesday of each month. And we always like your questions, and we have some very interesting guests. So make sure that you like, share, and subscribe.